The massive Valari ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like gleaming silver tears, their hulls reflecting the morning sun as they settled into perfect orbital formations. From the observation deck of the International Space Station, Commander Park Jin-woo watched the alien vessels with a mixture of awe and unease. Magnificent, aren't they? Ambassador Kethfer's voice carried the same patronizing tone he'd used since first contact 3 months ago. The Valari diplomat stood nearly 8 feet tall, his crystalline skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with his emotions. Your species has never seen such craftsmanship, I imagine. Dr. Kim Sora, Earth's lead xenobiologist, kept her expression carefully neutral. They're certainly impressive. We'd love to understand the propulsion systems. Kethfer's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Oh, my dear child, such knowledge requires centuries of careful development. Your people have only just learned to leave your own atmosphere consistently. We wouldn't want to overwhelm you with concepts beyond your current comprehension. The United Nations Assembly Hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from every nation gathered to hear the Valeria's formal proposal. Secretary General Martinez introduced the alien delegation with diplomatic courtesy. But Park Jin-woo noticed the tight lines around his eyes, the same expression he'd worn during the most tense negotiations of his career. Park Jin-woo shifted uncomfortably in his seat. 3 months ago, when the Valari first made contact, humanity had celebrated. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be the greatest moment in human history. But something about the way the Valari spoke to them made his skin crawl. They talked to humans the way adults talked to small children who had done something cute but ultimately meaningless. People of Earth, Kethfer began, his voice somehow reaching every corner of the massive hall without any visible amplification. System. The Valari Empire has watched your species with great interest. You show promise, despite your primitive origins. We have come to offer you a gift that we have shared with many other worlds across the galaxy. A murmur ran through the assembly. Park Jin-woo caught the eye of Dr. Lee Hyun-suk, Earth's chief historian, who sat 3 rows ahead. The older man's face was carefully blank, but Park Jin-woo had worked with him long enough to recognize the signs of deep concern. Kethfer gestured with one long, elegant hand, and suddenly the air above the assembly filled with beautiful holographic images. Cities that sparkled like jewels, spacecraft that moved through space like living things, and beings of various shapes and sizes working alongside tall Valari figures. We offer what we call uplift, Kethfer continued. We will slowly introduce your species to technologies that will advance your civilization by thousands of years. Clean energy that will never run out, medical treatments that will extend your lives, transportation systems that will let you travel between stars. The images were breathtaking. Park Jin-woo found himself leaning forward despite his reservations. Who wouldn't want such wonders? But Kethfer's voice took on the tone of a teacher addressing particularly slow students. These gifts must be earned. You must prove that you can handle such responsibility. You must show wisdom, cooperation, and most importantly, obedience to those who know better. There it was, the word that made Park Jin-woo's stomach clench. Obedience. Dr. Kim Sora raised her hand politely. Ambassador, could you tell us about the other species you've helped? We would love to learn from their experiences. Kethfer's crystalline skin flickered with what might have been pleasure. Such wonderful curiosity. Yes, we have guided 47 different species to higher levels of civilization. Many now serve as valued partners in our great work to bring order to the galaxy. Could we speak with representatives from these species? Asked Dr. Lee Hyun-suk. As historians, we believe we could learn much from understanding their journey. For just a moment, something flickered across Kethfer's bioluminescent patterns. Park Jin-woo had been trained to read micro-expressions in human faces, but alien. Body language was harder to interpret. Still, he was almost certain he had seen something like annoyance, quickly covered by condescending amusement. "Oh, my dear scholars," Kethfer said, his tone dripping with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to a child. These species have moved far beyond such simple concerns. They are busy with more important work now. But we have prepared extensive historical records that will teach you everything you need to know. The session continued for another hour, with Kethfer answering questions with the same mix of technological promises and barely concealed condescension. He spoke of humanity's potential and their charming enthusiasm, but always with the clear implication that humans were children who needed proper guidance. As the assembly ended, Park Jin-woo noticed something troubling. In all the beautiful holographic images Kethfer had shown them, the non-Valar species were always in supporting roles. They worked in the background, served in administrative positions, or performed manual labor. None of them seemed to be in positions of real authority. Later that evening, Park Jin-woo found himself in an elevator with Dr. Kim Sora and Dr. Lee Hyanzuk. The three of them had worked together on various projects over the years, and he trusted them more than most people did. Anyone else notice that we never actually saw any of these partner species making decisions? He asked quietly. Dr. Kim Sora nodded grimly. Everything we saw showed them taking orders or following instructions. Not very equal for partners. More concerning, Dr. Lee Hyanzuk added in a whisper, is what they're not showing us. 47 species, but their ships and technology seem to be operated entirely by Valari. Where are all these partners they're so proud of? The elevator reached Park Jin-woo's floor, but he didn't get out immediately. Need to be very careful, he said. Finally, and we need to start paying attention to what they're not telling us. As the elevator doors closed behind him, Park Jin-woo couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was being offered a choice between slavery and destruction, dressed up as a generous gift. 6 months after first contact, Dr. Lee Hyanzuk sat in his cluttered office at Seoul National University, surrounded by holographic displays showing fragments of Valari historical records. The aliens had been generous with their simplified historical accounts, never suspecting that Earth's historians were trained to read between the lines. "Show me the Cathara sequence again," he said to his research assistant. Park Me-Young. The hologram shifted, displaying what the Valari claimed was a success story, the Cathara civilization. Uplifted 3 centuries ago and now serving as valued administrators in the Valari bureaucracy. But Dr. Lee had learned to look beyond the carefully curated images. Notice the population centers. He pointed to the display. The Valari show us these magnificent cities, but look at the power grid analysis I've been working on. These settlements are barely maintaining subsistence levels. Park My-young frowned at the data. The energy distribution patterns suggest a civilization in decline, not one that's thriving. Exactly. And look at this.
After leave.
The Valari proudly show us Cathara administrators working in their bureaucracy. But watch their body language, their physical condition. The beings in the hologram moved with the careful precision of those who had learned that mistakes carried severe consequences. Their eyes held a hollow quality that Dr. Lee recognized from historical accounts of subjugated peoples. Park Me-young studied the images more carefully. The Cathara beings were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and large eyes. In the hologram, they stood behind desks in what looked like government offices, processing documents and operating computer systems. But something was wrong with the picture. They looked scared, she said quietly. Even when they're just doing paperwork, they look like they're afraid of making a mistake. Dr. Lee nodded grimly. That's not the behavior of valued partners. That's the behavior of people who know they're being watched and judged every moment. He pulled up another file. Now look at this. The Valari showed us this image of a Cathara family in their home. Beautiful house, well-dressed children, everyone smiling. Park My-young examined the image. At first glance, it did look like a happy family scene. But as she studied it more closely, she began to notice details that didn't fit. The house looks nice, but it's small, she observed. And look at the food on their table. It's very simple, almost like rations. Good eye, Dr. Lee said. And notice the children's clothes. They're clean and well-made, but they're all identical. Like uniforms. What does that mean? It means this isn't a family home. It's a display. They're showing us what they want us to see, not what life is really like for the Cathara. Dr. Lee had been working on this analysis for weeks, comparing the Valari's historical records with his own research into human patterns of conquest and control. The more he studied, the more disturbing the picture became. Let me show you something else, he said, pulling up a timeline. This is the Gerald civilization. According to the Valari, they were uplifted 700 years ago and are now thriving members of galactic society. The hologram showed another series of images. Beautiful cities, happy people, advanced technology. But Dr. Lee had learned to look deeper. See this power consumption data? He pointed to a graph. 700 years ago, when the Valari first arrived, the Gerald homeworld was using about 10% of its total energy capacity. That's normal for a developing civilization. What about now? Now they're using less than 2%. For a civilization that's supposedly more advanced than ever before. Park Myung stared at the numbers. That's impossible. Advanced civilizations use more energy, not less. Less they're not advanced anymore, Dr. Lee said quietly. Less they've been stripped of their industry and forced to live at subsistence levels. The pattern was becoming clear, but Dr. Lee needed more evidence. Fortunately, the Valari's arrogance made them surprisingly willing to share information when approached correctly. That afternoon, Dr. Kim Sora visited the Valari Cultural Center in Geneva. She had perfected the art of asking questions that seemed innocent but revealed important information. Ambassador Kethfer, she said with her usual expression of eager curiosity. I've been studying the historical records you shared, and I'm fascinated by how successful your uplift program has been. Could you tell me more about the earliest civilizations you helped? I'm especially interested in how you decide when a species is ready for more advanced technology. Kethver's crystalline skin shimmered with pleasure. Such thoughtful questions. You truly show the potential your species has. As the alien diplomat launched into his explanation, Dr. Kim Sora listened carefully, not just to what he said, but to what he didn't say. Gerald were among our first great successes, he explained. 700 years ago, they had barely learned to work with metal. Under our guidance, they developed space travel within 2 centuries. That's amazing, Dr. Kim Sora said. Are they still active in space? I'd love to study their development. For just a moment, Kethfer's bioluminescent patterns flickered in a way that seemed wrong. The Gerald have moved beyond such simple concerns. They serve the greater good. In their own way now? What kind of service? They provide valuable resources and labor for more important projects. It's a great honor for them. That evening, the research team met in a secure room beneath the university. Dr. Lee had prepared a comprehensive analysis that painted a terrifying picture. I've studied every historical record they've shared, he began. 47 different species, spanning 800 years of Valari expansion. And the pattern is the same every time. He activated a holographic timeline showing the rise and fall of civilizations under Valari control. First, they make contact and offer partnership. This lasts about 10 to 20 years. Then they begin serious technological integration and resource extraction. This goes on for 50 to 100 years. Finally, the civilization collapses and becomes completely dependent on the Valari. What happens to the people? Asked Dr. Kim Sora. They become workers, slaves. Really, though the Valari don't call them that. They're kept alive to provide labor and resources, but their civilization is essentially destroyed. The room fell, silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Park Jin-woo spoke up from where he sat near the door. How long do we have? Based on the pattern, we're still in the early phase, but they're already pushing for deeper integration. I estimate maybe 5 years before they start the serious extraction. Dr. Kim Sora looked around the room. We need to warn the world leaders. This information can't stay secret. Agreed, Dr. Lee said. But we also need to be smart about this. The Valari think we're too primitive to see through their lies. Let's keep it that way while we figure out how to stop them. Above them, the Valari ships continued their silent patrol, their occupants confident in their 800-year-old methods. They had done this 47 times before. It had always ended the same way. But they had never encountered a species that specialized in learning from the mistakes of others. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath Seoul had been transformed into Earth's most classified research facility. Dr. Cho Dae-hyun ran his hand along the wall where human engineers had installed quantum-shielded laboratories. invisible to Valari scanning technology. Status report, he said to his team of international engineers and scientists. The Valari Power Core. Analysis is complete, reported Dr. Wang Lemay, on loan from Beijing's Institute of Technology. Their systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they have a critical flaw. She activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of Valari technology. Everything is networked through quantum entanglement matrices. It makes their systems incredibly efficient, but also creates cascading failure points. Dr. Cho said. The display zoomed in on the quantum networks. If you disrupt the entanglement at key nodes, the entire system experiences cascade failures. It's like pulling out the keystone from an arch. Dr. Park Seon-ho, Earth's lead physicist, looked up from his own workstation. We've been developing countermeasures based on that principle. Instead of trying to match their technology, we're creating systems that exploit their vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, on the surface, the official Earth-Valari cultural exchange continued. Ambassador Kethver had established a permanent embassy in New York, from which he conducted regular educational seminars. For Earth's leaders, Dr. Cho looked around the underground facility that had become humanity's secret weapon. 6 months ago, this had been nothing but abandoned train tunnels. It housed the most advanced research laboratory on Earth, built entirely in secret by teams working around the clock. The beautiful thing about their technology, Dr. Wang Lemay continued, is that it's so advanced they can't imagine anyone finding a way around it. They've made everything dependent on their quantum networks. She pulled up another display showing Valari's ship designs. Look at this. Their spacecraft, their weapons, their communication systems, even their life support. Everything runs through the same quantum matrix. Dr. Park Seon-ho smiled grimly. It's like they built a house of cards and then forgot it was made of cards. Underground facility buzzed with quiet activity. Scientists from every major nation worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that would have been impossible during peacetime. The Valari threat had done something remarkable. It had united humanity like never before. What about our own systems? Dr. Cho asked. Are we ready? That's the best part, Dr. Wang Lemay replied. Let's apply. We're not trying to build better technology than theirs. We're building different technology, simpler, more robust, completely independent of their networks. She led him to another section of the facility where teams were working on what looked like ordinary human equipment. The Valari expect us to be impressed by complexity. They can't understand why anyone would choose simple solutions when advanced ones are available. Dr. Cho examined the equipment. It looked almost primitive compared to Valari technology, but he knew looks could be deceiving. This can really work without their quantum networks? Not only can it work without them, Doctor. Park Seon-ho said, it can actively disrupt them. We've learned to turn their own sophistication against them. Above ground, the Valari continued their slow integration of Earth systems. They had convinced world leaders to allow them to upgrade power grids, communication networks, and transportation systems. To most humans, it looked like generous gifts from advanced aliens. But Dr. Cho and his team knew better. They had studied the pattern from the 47 previous worlds. The Valari always started with infrastructure, making their target civilizations dependent on alien technology. Once the dependence was complete, the real exploitation began. Status on the power grid modifications. Dr. Cho asked. Complete, reported Dr. Kim Young-ho, the team's electrical engineer. Every power plant they've upgraded now has our countermeasures installed. Hidden, of course, and they haven't detected anything. Their scanners are looking for advanced technology. Our countermeasures are deliberately primitive by their standards. They literally can't see them. The genius of the plan was its simplicity. While the Valari installed their sophisticated quantum systems, human engineers quietly added backup systems that looked like old, outdated equipment. The aliens dismissed them as primitive junk not worth removing. What about communications? Dr. Cho asked. Same story, Dr. Park Seon-ho replied. They've upgraded our satellite networks with their quantum relays. But we've kept our old radio systems operational and added some new ones they can't detect. Transportation? All major airports and seaports now have dual systems. The Valari. Quantum networks for efficiency and are independent backups for reliability. Dr. Cho nodded approvingly. In just 18 months, humanity had managed to create a completely parallel infrastructure that could operate independently of Volari technology. More importantly, they had done it without arousing suspicion. The weapons systems? He asked quietly. Dr. Wang Lemay's expression grew serious. Ready for testing. We've identified the exact frequency needed to disrupt their quantum entanglement. A single pulse at the right frequency should cascade through their entire network. Our defenses, hardened against their weapons? Again, we're not trying to match their firepower. We're making their weapons ineffective. The facility had grown from a handful of scientists to over 3,000 researchers working in shifts around the clock. They came from every continent, speaking dozens of languages, but united by a single goal, ensuring that humanity would not become the 48th species to fall to Volari exploitation. There's something else, Dr. Park, Sionho said quietly. We've been monitoring their communications. Their empire is having problems. He pulled up intercepted data showing supply line disruptions and resource shortages across Volari's space. They're more desperate than they're letting on. This isn't just another routine uplift. They need Earth's resources badly. Dr. Cho studied the data. How long before they abandon the pretense? Not long. Maybe 6 months? They're already pushing for accelerated integration. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They had always known this moment would come, but it was still sobering to realize how close they were to the end of the deception. Then, we need to be ready, Dr. Cho said finally. Double the shifts, triple the security. Yes. And start moving the equipment to secondary locations. As the teams dispersed to their tasks, Dr. Cho remained in the central command room, looking at the displays, showing Earth's hidden defenses. Humanity had learned from the mistakes of 47 other species. They would not repeat them. The Volari still thought they were dealing with primitive children. They were about to learn that these children had grown up. The first sign of trouble came through Dr. Lee Hyenske's network of contacts among the abandoned worlds. A garbled transmission from the Cathara system carried a desperate warning. The Volari are failing. They're extracting everything. In the secure facility beneath Seoul, the research team gathered for an emergency meeting. Dr. Kim Sora had just returned from the Volari embassy, where she'd observed increasingly erratic behavior from the aliens. They're showing signs of stress, she reported. Kethver's bioluminescent patterns are chaotic, and they're demanding accelerated integration. Schedules. It matches the historical pattern, Dr. Lee Hyanzuk confirmed. When the Volari Empire faces internal pressure, they increase resource extraction from their uplift worlds. The Gerald homeworld was stripped bare during the last crisis. Park Jin-woo studied the latest intelligence reports. Our sources in the space monitoring stations report unusual activity around the Volari fleet. They're repositioning for what looks like a blockade formation. The moment of truth came 3 days later. Ambassador Kethver requested an emergency session with the UN Security Council, his usual diplomatic composure replaced by barely contained urgency. The galactic situation has changed, he announced, his crystalline skin flickering with agitated patterns. Earth must advance to full integration immediately. Your world's resources are needed for the greater good of galactic civilization. President, Park Soo-jin maintained her diplomatic tone. We appreciate your confidence in our readiness, Ambassador. However, our scientists believe we need more time to properly adapt to your technologies. Time is a luxury we can no longer afford, Kethver's voice carried new authority. The integration will begin within 7 days. Your compliance is not optional. The mask had finally slipped. After 8 centuries of perfecting their methods, the Volari had revealed their true nature out of desperation. I'm afraid that's not acceptable. President Park, Tojin said calmly. Kethver's patterns shifted to something humans had never seen before. Predatory anger. You forget your place, child. Your species exists at our sufferance. We have eliminated civilizations for far less defiance. Have you? Dr. Kim Sora stood from her observer's seat. Because we've been studying your history, Ambassador. Of it, the room fell completely silent. Every human delegate knew this moment had been planned for months, but seeing it actually happen was still shocking. Dr. Kim Sora walked to the center of the room, carrying a small device that she placed. On the table? "We know what happened to the Geril," she said quietly. "We know about the Cathara. We know about all 47 civilizations you've conquered and destroyed." Kethfer's bioluminescent patterns flared with rage. "Impossible. You lack the capability. For such analysis, you're primitive children playing with concepts beyond your understanding." "Are we?" Dr. Lihayansky stepped forward, joining Dr. Kim Sora. "We may be primitive, but we're very good at learning from history. Every species you conquered made the same mistake. They trusted you." He activated the device Dr. Kim Sora had placed on the table. Holographic displays filled the air, showing the true fate of the Velari's previous victims. Images of depleted worlds, collapsed cities, and desperate refugees appeared above the assembly. "This is what partnership with the Velari really means," Dr. Kim Sora said. "Strip mining entire worlds, enslaving populations, destroying civilizations and leaving the survivors to die." Kethfer's patterns were now blazing with fury. "You dare to judge us? You brought order to chaos? We elevated savages to serve a greater purpose. I mean, you turned them into slaves," President Park Soo-jin said. "And now you want to do the same to us." "Your defiance will be corrected," Kethfer snarled. He pulled out a small device and pressed a control. "Your power systems are now under our control. Your weapons are disabled. Your communications are severed. You will comply, or you will be eliminated." He pressed the control again, expecting Earth's infrastructure to shut down immediately. Continued operating, and the emergency alert systems remained silent. Kethfer pressed the control repeatedly, his patterns flickering with confusion and growing panic. "This is impossible. Your systems are integrated with our networks. They cannot function independently." "Actually, they can," Dr. Chode Heian said as he entered the chamber, followed by a team of human engineers. "We've been preparing for this moment for 2 years." "Impossible," Kethfer repeated.
"How? You are a primitive species. You cannot have developed countermeasures to our technology."
"You're right, Park," Ginwoo said, joining the group. "We didn't develop countermeasures to your technology. We developed countermeasures to your weaknesses." Dr. Cho activated his own device, and displays showing the Velari fleet appeared in the air, the graceful ships that had intimidated humanity. For 2 years were now drifting helplessly, their formations breaking apart as their coordination systems failed. "Your quantum networks are very impressive," Dr. Cho explained, "but they have a critical flaw. Disrupt the entanglement at key points, and the entire system collapses." "This cannot be happening," Kethfer said, his voice now carrying genuine fear. "You are children you cannot have. ... "We learn from your mistakes," Dr. Kim Sora interrupted. "Every species you conquered became dependent on your technology. We chose a different path. Above them, the Velari ships continued to drift. As their systems failed one by one, the aliens who had ruled the galaxy for 8 centuries found themselves helpless. Their superior technology turned against them by a species they had dismissed as primitive. We also learned something else," Dr. Lee Hyansik added. "The Velari empire is collapsing. You need our resources because your own empire is failing. You're not here to help us. You're here because you're desperate." Kethfer's patterns had gone from blazing fury to dim panic. "You do not understand the consequences of your actions. Out. Without our guidance, you will destroy yourselves." Maybe President Park Soo-jin said, "But that's our choice to make, not yours." Ambassador looked around the room at the faces of the human delegates. For the first time in 8 centuries, the Velari had encountered a species that refused to be conquered, a species that had learned from the mistakes of others without making them first. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now," Dr. Kim Sora said, "we show you what happens when the children grow up." The age of Velari dominance was ending, brought down not by superior technology or military might, but by a species that had made a science of learning from history too. Years after the Velari revelation, Dr. Kim Sora stood on the observation deck of the Earth Alliance flagship Harmony, watching as the first truly cooperative interstellar council convened in the rebuilt Cathara system. The war had been brief, but decisive once. The Valari's quantum networks failed. Their entire empire collapsed within months. The Gerald delegation has arrived, reported Captain Park Min-ho, the ship's commanding officer. They're requesting permission to present their territorial autonomy proposal. Granted, Dr. Kim Sora replied, though she still felt strange being addressed as Director of Interstellar Relations. 2 years ago, she had been a xenobiologist studying alien customs. Now, she was helping to rebuild galactic civilization. Council chamber buzzed with activity as representatives from 37 formerly enslaved worlds gathered around the circular table Earth had designed. Unlike the Valaris hierarchical arrangements, this setup emphasized equality and mutual respect. The session is now open, announced Dr. Lee Hyun-suk, who had transitioned from historian to diplomatic mediator. First order of business, the Cathara Reconstruction Project. Ambassador Veltar, the first freely elected Cathara representative in 3 centuries, rose to address the assembly. Our world has been stripped of most natural resources, but our people endure. We formally request assistance in rebuilding. Our industrial base, the Gero Confederation, offers mineral extraction expertise, replied their representative. In exchange, we seek access to Cathara orbital manufacturing techniques. The Valdani Union can provide agricultural technology, added another delegate. Our hydroponic systems could help restore your food production. Dr. Kim Sora smiled as she watched the negotiation unfold. This was how civilizations should interact. Partners sharing knowledge and resources, not as overlords exploiting subjects. What about the Valari? Asked the Terran delegate. Their home system has been quarantined, but we can't leave them to starve. The chamber fell quiet at the mention of their former oppressors. Dr. Kim Sora had expected this question, but it was still difficult to address. The Valari had enslaved 47 civilizations, but humanity had insisted on a different approach than simple revenge. The rehabilitation program is proceeding. Dr. Park Si-anho reported from his position as coordinator of former enemy territories. We've established sustainable technology on their core worlds. Their population is slowly learning to live without their quantum networks and the leadership, asked the Cathara ambassador, his voice carrying centuries of pain. Former ambassador. Kethver and the Imperial Council have been sentenced to community service on the worlds they devastated. They're helping with reconstruction efforts under supervision. It was a radical idea, justice through rebuilding rather than punishment through destruction. Many of the liberated species had wanted to simply eliminate the Valari entirely, but Earth had argued for a different path. How can we trust them? Asked the Gero representative. They enslaved our people for 700 years. Dr. Kim Sora stood to address the concern. We can't trust them yet, but we can teach them. The Valari fell into the same trap as every other empire in history. They believed that power came from controlling others, or showing them that real strength comes from cooperation. The afternoon session focused on longer-term goals. Dr. Cho Dae-hyun presented plans for a new generation of starships, designed by engineers from multiple worlds. These vessels would be owned collectively, with crews drawn from different species working together. We're also establishing the Galactic Memory Project, Dr. Lee Hyun-suk announced. A complete record of the Valari Empire's rise and fall, preserved, so that future generations can learn from our history. Captain Park Min-ho approached Dr. Kim Sora during the evening break. Director, we're receiving a transmission from the outer systems. It's from the hegemony. They want to open diplomatic relations. The hegemony had been the Valaris' main rival, controlling territory on the far side of the galaxy. Their sudden interest in diplomacy meant they were probably reconsidering their own imperial ambitions. Ate up a meeting, Dr. Kim Sora decided. But make it clear that we're not interested in replacing one empire with another. If they want to join our coalition, they'll need to accept our principles. The next few days brought remarkable progress. Species that had been enemies under Valari rule began forming partnerships. The Cathara shared their manufacturing knowledge with the Gerald, who provided mining expertise in return. The Valdani agricultural systems were adapted for use on dozens of different worlds. The breakthrough came when the hegemony delegation arrived for negotiations. Their leader, a massive reptilian being named Overlord Thaxron, had clearly expected to negotiate with Earth as one empire to another. "You control 37 worlds," he said to Dr. Kim Sora during their first meeting. "Your military defeated the Valari Empire. Why do you not claim their territory as your own?" "Because we learned from their mistakes," she replied. "Empires collapse. Cooperation lasts. But how do you maintain order without control? How do you prevent rebellion among your subjects?" "We don't have subjects," Dr. Kim Sora explained patiently. "We have partners. They stay because they choose. 2. Not because we force them." The concept seemed to genuinely confuse the hegemony leader. Over the following weeks, Thaxron observed the coalition's operations with growing amazement. Former enemies were working together on joint projects. Species that had been enslaved were now contributing to galactic governance.
"Hey, this should not
work," he confided to Dr. Kim Sora. "History shows that civilizations need hierarchy to function." "History shows that empires need hierarchy to function," she corrected. "We're not building an empire. We're building something completely new." The final session of the council produced a document that would change galactic civilization, the Cooperation Treaty. Instead of a conquest agreement between rulers, it was a framework for voluntary partnership between equals. Article 1, Dr. 1. Lee Hyun-suk read aloud, "No member world shall be required to provide resources beyond their willing capacity." Article 2. All technological and scientific discoveries shall be shared freely among members. Article 3. All disputes shall be resolved through discussion and mutual agreement. As the representatives signed the treaty, Dr. Kim Sora looked out at the stars, where ships from dozens of worlds moved in peaceful formation. The galaxy was changing, one world at a time, as species learned that working together was stronger than conquest. "The children," she said quietly to herself, "have finally taught the adults how to cooperate." The age of empires was ending. The age of partnership had begun, and it had started with a species that had learned the most important lesson of all: the greatest strength comes not from controlling others, but from helping them grow.